This guy just dropped off this Mercury Mountaineer. I don't know, like Mariner? I don't know. Marinade. Anyway, he says it needs a wheel bearing. So I'm backing out of here. Let's listen to this. Oh, it didn't want to grab reverse. All right. Do you guys hear that nonsense? I'm not sure this is a wheel bearing. Anyway, let me go ahead and get the CRX out the garage. We'll pull this in and see what's going on. And back into the garage. All right, guys, so I was right. You know, that noise I was hearing, I'm like, that sounds a lot more than just a wheel bearing. So if we look inside of here, sure enough, we have a broken CV shaft. Can this car benefit from a wheel bearing? I'm sure it can. But the real problem here is the CV shaft. So I'm gonna see if the owner wants to change the CV shaft as well as do the wheel bearing at the same time. We got the green light from the owner to go ahead and do the wheel bearing and the CV shaft. He said he's gonna drop off the part. So let's start tearing it apart. And as you can see, this tire is pretty much destroyed. This reminds me, I need to rotate the tires on my Nissan. So far, it's coming apart. And of course, you can imagine every single ball joint on this thing is worn out. Stabilizer link is bent from the CV shaft hitting it. So here goes the outside end of the CV shaft. And even though the wheel bearing isn't the main culprit here, I'm sure you guys can hear that. That wheel bearing is shot. So sure, you could get away with just doing the CV shaft, but it also needs a wheel bearing. Just like you could argue it needs everything else in this truck. This is one of those trucks where I can't really try to pitch to the owner like, oh, this ball joint needs to be replaced, the lower ball joint or both of the tie rods, because it's not going to happen. This is one of those trucks that fix the absolute bare minimum just so they could continue to drive it. They are not worried about regular maintenance or anything like that. This car is as good as ready for the scrapyard. So let me go ahead and zip this wheel bearing out of here. I've been using the flex head so far for the entire job, and it's been working wonders. All right, so I knocked out the old wheel bearing and I cleaned up all the corrosion that was on the face here and inside the bore. And then I sprayed everything with some CRC, and that's just about cured up. Also sprayed the face of the new wheel bearing with more CRC just to protect it from corrosion. Now I already test fit it right there and it fits perfectly. The corrosion is not interfering with anything. It's nice that the new wheel bearing came with new hardware. So here goes the bolts for the actual wheel bearing. Now don't worry about this thing hanging. This thing is garbage. You can see the new wheel bearing has a new sensor on it. I'm not worried about that. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this on, and that's pretty much it. There isn't much else I could do at the moment because I'm still waiting on the owner to bring me a CV shaft. I got the old CV shaft out, as you can see. Here goes the new one. The owner just dropped it off. Now I am gonna have to cut the stabilizer link to remove it because it's just in the way to get the new one on. The reason why I was able to get the old one out is because it was in pieces, so it just made it easier. But the new one, it's not gonna happen. Normally I would just remove the stabilizer link, but because this one is bent from it being hit by the CV shaft, there's no way you're gonna get this to come out. You can see I removed the nut and everything here on top, but that sleeve isn't gonna let go of that bent rod. So just gonna go ahead and chop it off. It's a casualty, but thankfully those parts are pretty cheap. And let's just do what we gotta do to get the new CV shaft installed. And there we have it, guys. Honestly, these parts are way too nice for this car. So as you can see, I don't know if I showed this, but there goes where the stabilizer link used to be. I had to cut it off. When the owner was here dropping off the CV shaft, I pointed it out to him. I told him, hey, there's nowhere around this. I'm gonna have to cut it off in order to get the new part in. And he said, no problem at all. Go ahead and do it. And we'll just replace that. So it's not a big issue. And yeah, let me just go ahead and button all of this stuff up and it'll be all set. We'll take it out for a test drive. Unfortunately, these destroyed, messed up rotors and brake pads are going back on because, again, that's not what it's here for. The car still stops. So it's not an issue for the owner. When he first dropped the car off, he actually has a complete knuckle, like this whole assembly in the back right here, because he was like, it was cheaper to go to the junkyard and get this complete assembly to change the wheel bearing than it is to just buy a new one from AutoZone. So it's what he did. And as soon as he showed it to me, I was like, I'm not gonna put that on. Like, first of all, it's a little bit more work to change the entire knuckle than it is to change the wheel bearing. I don't know, you could argue against that. Maybe it's easier to some people. Yeah, I told him, what if that wheel bearing from the junkyard is bad? Then you're paying for labor, and we put all the parts on, and at the end of the day, if it's bad, you're gonna have to pay for new parts, and you're gonna have to pay for labor again. It just costs more. I told him, just go to AutoZone and get a brand new wheel bearing. So it's what he did. I'm glad he listened to me. All right, so everything is put back together. Axle nut has been torqued down. I got the ABS sensor ran where it's supposed to, and it's plugged in up there. That's pretty much it. I'm gonna go ahead, pop the wheel on it, and let's take it out for a test drive. Transmission half the time doesn't want to grab gear, but it's driving a million times better. Before, you couldn't even go over 5 miles per hour without that axle just slapping around on there. You can imagine, right? And now it's driving just fine. I must have started this thing like 10 times just to get it out of my driveway, and then it just dies in the middle of the street, and I'm blocking traffic, so so cars start beeping at me, and I keep trying to start it, but the car just keeps dying instantly. Yeah, this thing's coughing on wheels. I'm just gonna go around the block once. I've already confirmed that it's fixed. Okay, I don't want to be in this thing any longer than I have to. I wonder why the tires are getting chewed up. Look at this alignment. It'll be fine. Just keep driving it. Put your radio up louder. And it came here for a tune-up and a alternator. The guy said, as you can see, he's got a brand new battery. It keeps killing the batteries, and at that point he knew it was an alternator. So I guess trial and error, huh? So it needs an alternator. Car's running. It barely made it here. But I want to show you guys, you hear all that noise? Yeah, that's that pulley. So I told the owner, hey, we could go ahead and knock out this pulley while we're in there. So that's the plan. Hopefully he could find a part, and we'll get all this taken care of. Let me start tearing this apart and get this alternator out of here. So I got my meter connected, and you can see we are charging, but the owner said it's when you start driving, basically the battery light comes on and it stops charging. So at idle, the alternator could supply enough voltage to charge the battery. It's when you start driving. Anyways, I didn't check the car. He wants me to just change the part, so that's what I'm doing. We're gonna change the part because it's what he wants done. I got the alternator off of the car, as you can see. Doesn't sound too happy. And this thing is not that old. It looks relatively new. I guarantee you this is one of those like value craft ones. And look what we have to replace it with. Get in the zone, AutoZone. So it'll be back for that real soon. Anyway, alternator's out. Let's go ahead and pop in a new one. But before we do that, let's go ahead and get this idler pulley out of here. Look at this mess. That's crazy. Wow, there goes the bearings right there falling out. Yeah, there's no way that thing could go back on. It has to get replaced. So I got the idler pulley off. This is the first time I've ever seen a pulley this bad. You can see how it just came off in pieces. Anyway, I went on AutoZone's website, and they have a pulley here, and on their website it shows that the pulley has a diameter of 90 millimeters. So if we measure this one, you can see we are just about 90. So I'm gonna go ahead and have the owner pick up that idler pulley, and it should be all set. All right, so I got the new alternator just loosely sitting in place. And when I took all this stuff apart, it only had 3 fasteners holding on this U-shaped plate right here. So this one right here was actually missing. So I just found a bolt in my collection that fit. Yeah, it's a different size head, but the thread pitch and the length is correct. So not a big issue. It's better to have it held down. And what I found is, like, the second I took off this bolt, when I was taking all this stuff apart, I saw the alternator like shift. Almost made me think, like, were those bolts down there even tight? I don't know. I didn't install the one that was on here, so I don't know what the heck they did, but clearly things weren't right. So we'll go ahead and get this buttoned up correctly. I did give the owner the old pulley. I told him, here, take this to the auto parts store. I sent him a picture. I went on their website. Here's the exact part we need. So send him a screenshot of it, and here, take the old part with you, just so they can match it up, and hopefully we get the correct part. So at this point, I'm just gonna go ahead and button up the alternator. We're gonna be waiting on the pulley. In the meantime, let's start taking out these spark plugs. Now, he only brought me 4 spark plugs because the first store he went to only had 4 in stock. So while he's out getting that pulley, he's going to bring me the other 4 spark plugs. So I'm just going to start on one bank, most likely this side right here, because it seems to be a little bit easier. I got all the spark plugs done on the driver's side. So here they go right here. And someone got really happy with the dielectric grease on these. Alright, so we also have a brand new air filter, and we got a little surprise. Unfortunately, nobody's home right now, so no little furry friend in here. So we'll go ahead and clean this out right now. Alright, so I got all that mess cleaned up. Owner just dropped off the new spark plugs, the other 4. Here goes our new idler pulley. You can see how the old one is just completely missing the bearing. There was no going back together with this one. And he also brought a box of ignition coil boots. You know, the little rubber boot that goes below the ignition coil, and they have like the little springs also that makes contact with the top of the spark plug. So, you know, on his second trip from AutoZone, he's like, oh, here, I got these 2. I look at them and I'm like, you're not gonna need these. There's nothing wrong with yours. You could go ahead and return them. And normally I wouldn't say that. I would just say, all right, I'll put them on. But here's the problem. The problem is I already knocked all of these out on the driver's side. So it would require that I go ahead and pull out all of the ignition coils again. No, I'm not gonna do it again. Okay, so he should have brought the parts the first time. Suppose that and then on top of that, he didn't even mention that he was gonna bring those. Had he brought those, I would have just left all the coils out waiting for new parts, just like I'm here waiting for these parts, you know. But it was like out of the blue, out of nowhere, he just said, oh, here's this too. So sorry, I'm not taking all this stuff back apart again. So just take those parts back, get your money back. And so far, I'm not seeing anything wrong with the boots. Let's go ahead and put the spark plugs on the passenger side now. All right, I haven't made any progress. I just got back from having dinner, and I am full. It's like I just want to take a nap. I don't even want to work anymore. But I got to get this done. Had some homemade cornbread, some chili, homemade chili, and a salad. Just hit the spot, you know what I mean? All right, let's go ahead and knock this out. I got everything put back together. New spark plugs are installed, new pulleys on, belts in place, and I looked over everything. It looks like everything is back where it belongs. So got the battery reconnected. Go ahead and start her up. Now as soon as it starts, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it back off because I want to make sure that the belt alignment is correct. Turn it off. Let me go check the belt. So the belt looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and start it up again. All right, so it is running now, but I had to start it up and hold my foot on the accelerator pedal just to get it to stay running. As you can see, it's all running by itself now. It doesn't sound great. It sounds like there might be a little like fish bite of a misfire somewhere. But we got to keep in mind how this truck came in. It sounded horrible, so bad to the point where, oh, that's not good. The hood just fell on my light. See it? And that's why you don't keep any of your tools underneath the hood of a car. Look at that. That's crazy. Garbage. Trying to break my light. Anyway, so the truck is running and it sounds way better than how it came in. Let's go ahead and make sure that the new alternator is charging. And yes, we are charging. You can see the engine barely wanted to run, so it's hard to tell. It's like you got to start somewhere. We have to put the new parts on to see how bad it's really running after, you know, the new parts are on it. And it's definitely an improvement. Anyway, the owner's like, oh, I think I'm gonna need brakes, so let me know if you want to do the brakes on it. Well, pretty sure this thing needs pads and rotors all the way around. And look at this upper control arm. See that ball joint? Yeah, it's pretty sketchy. Alright, so I couldn't find any misfire data on the scanner. but I was able to reset the keep alive memory. So there's nothing else to do. I noticed that the tires are kind of low on air pressure, so I'm gonna go ahead and top off the tires and we'll take it out for a test drive, and that's pretty much it. As I'm driving around, I hear something like hissing in the background. So I'm like, what the hell is that? It sounds like a spray bottle, like a spray paint can, like when it's being emptied. So I started looking around. I'm like, what is back here? What's making noise? Then I find this bottle on the floor here, and look at it. It got punctured from it rolling around down here. So I'm gonna go ahead and toss this out right now. It's just making a mess inside of this guy's car. So let me go ahead and park it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and leave the can right there. You can see where it's spraying out. Leave it right there. I'll tell the owner about it and he can do whatever he wants. Anyway, that's it. The owner can come pick it up. So I'm doing a voiceover now because I actually lost a recording that I had for this car about a week ago. Anyway, to sum things up, this lady called me saying, hey, I have a 2007 Hyundai Sonata and I took it to a shop. They said it needs 4 ball joints because the front end's all jacked up, right? It drives like crap. So, alright, so I went ahead and ordered the parts for her, and when the parts came in, she dropped the car off, and immediately I knew something was wrong because she doesn't have a Sonata. This is a Santa Fe. So, yep, wrong parts. Had to send them back, but I figured while the car is here, let's take this opportunity to look at the car, see what it really needs, because now I'm not really trusting what's going on here. And it's a good thing I did that because ball joints was not going to fix this car. It needed much more than that. And we actually went ahead and ordered the correct parts, and now it's back about a week and a half later. So now you're up to date. We're back with a Santa Fe. We actually have the correct parts for the correct car now. So what we're going to replace is front left floor control arm, both outer tire rods, front left strut assembly. I want to say both front stabilizer links, a front right wheel bearing, and I think that's just about it. Now the owner is saying that the noise has gotten worse and worse to the point where she even stopped driving the car because it just straight up feels like she was gonna die in this thing. She said the clunking is really bad, and now it feels like, or it sounds like there's grinding coming from the front right side. And look at this wheel, guys. So I haven't looked at it yet, but look at how much the bottom of that wheel is tucking out. I think that's that wheel bearing that I told her obviously it's bad. It's why we got a new one. I think it's gotten real bad, and it's at an angle like this. She said it sounds like my brakes are grinding. Well, yeah, when the wheel bearing fails and it lets all that extra play happen, it tends to lean really hard on the brakes and just chews right through your brakes. If you were to just go ahead and slap brakes on this, it's just gonna eat right through it. The wheel bearing needs to get fixed, so we got that. Unfortunately, we don't have any brakes. I don't know how bad the brakes are on it yet, like if they're down metal to metal just yet, but that's gonna have to be for another day. For now, let's go ahead and knock out the parts that we do have. And one more thing I'm going to try to address while it's here. You can see the car was in an accident, like been sideswiped or something. But anyway, whenever she turns the wheel hits the fender right here. You can see how close that is. So this thing is constantly rubbing all day, and it just sounds really bad while you're driving. So I told her I would try to pull that back. I mean, we don't have to be pretty about it. You could see all this stuff is destroyed. It's just a matter of getting it out the way so it's not hitting the tire anymore. Now, I don't remember how bad this was last time, but this right here, guys, is a lot of shaking. I would have to review my old footage to see if it's gotten worse. She says it's gotten worse, and that's why she stopped driving it. So yeah, that's a lot of play. And you can see the strut is like all moist around here. Around there, you can see all the oil that's just collecting dirt. So what we're going to do is we're only going to replace the strut alone. We're going to reuse the coil spring, reuse the bellow, but we have a new strut and a new top hat up there because of the whole bearing thing. Yeah, what sucks though is when she first got into this accident, which is I want to say just a couple of months ago, maybe less, she said all of this got shoved in and she paid a guy like $1,500, not a shop, just a guy apparently, like $1,500. He said he had to pull the subframe, which all right. But she said he also replaced the strut. Like, what do you mean he replaced? I told her this thing is bad. It needs to be changed. It's leaking. I don't know what this guy is talking about, and I'm not gonna comment about it. But I'm like, it needs to get replaced. So that's why she gave me the green light to replace it. And she wasn't very happy to find out that this thing is bad when he said he replaced it. Maybe he went to a salvage yard and grabbed one. I have no idea. But that sucks, man. She paid him a lot of money, and I don't know what he did. Now that I got the wheel off, let's try to push this fender back first. So you can see this lip is kind of rolled out right here, this one. So I want to go ahead and like crimp it back in, push that in, and then we'll just go ahead and smack this side with a hammer just to get this whole thing to get pushed back. We don't have to be gentle with any of this stuff. You can see the door is destroyed, the fender is destroyed, so it doesn't matter, guys. All right, guys, so I put the wheel back in place loosely just so we could see where this thing's at. And we went from maybe having like an inch gap or less to, I want to say that's got to be at least 2.5 inches right there. This is no longer going to rub whenever she turns the steering wheel. So I'm okay with that. All I did was, like I said, bend this lip in a little bit and then hit this with the sledgehammer, and it just kind of pushed the whole thing forward. And that's it for that. So I removed the cotter pan, and then the nut came off so easy I could have just removed it with my fingers if I wanted to. And this is a perfect example of people who try to fix things but they don't do them right, and then it causes future problems, because if you don't torque these down properly, it can lead to a premature wheel bearing failure. So yeah, you know, you got to be careful with things like that. That was super loose, and like the bolts that go to the strut to the knuckle, everything was loose here, and it just sucks, you know, to pay someone so much money. And do I see that money justified anywhere? No, because I don't see any new parts. I mean, like I said, I'm not gonna comment because I don't know what the guy did. I don't know the condition of all this stuff before he touched it, so it is what it is. Anyway, I decided to go ahead and start with the strut assembly, so we're gonna go ahead and get this out of here first. As you can see, I cut the stabilizer link because I'm not gonna mess with trying to get this off right here. It doesn't matter, we have new stabilizer links anyway. And let's go over to the brand new spring compressor and put that bad boy to use. So I just finished installing a new strut. You can see we reused the original spring, original bellow, and brand new strut installed, as well as a new top hat with a new bearing on it. So this is all set, everything's put together. And if we look at the old one here, it just goes all the way down. Even makes a clunky noise when it hits the bottom. So yeah, this thing is shot. Oh, but the guy changed it, $1,500. So as you can see, I'm in it pretty deep. Got pretty much everything taken apart, minus the outer tie rod. We still have to change that. Oh, and get the stabilizer link off. I waited until the control arm was off to get the back of this side. It just makes it much easier with the control arm out of the way. But yeah, here it goes right here, and you can see the bushing fell out as soon as the control arm came out. Now, you know what's funny is, with the age of this vehicle, I expected almost everything to give me a fight, right? But no, everything came apart really easy, as if someone's just been in here recently, hence the guy who did $1,500 worth of work, right? So these are all old used parts. I'm wondering if this guy took her money and went to the junkyard and got junkyard parts for her car. It's crazy. I know I keep talking about it, but I'm not going to bring it up to her. I'm not trying to get anyone upset or start an argument or anything like that. Yeah, I don't see what was done here. Where's the $1,500 worth of work? I don't understand this. So I'm here putting this stuff back together, right? New lower control arm. And this is the bolt that I removed out of here. So I naturally try to put it back where it came out of, right? But once I put it in there, I noticed that on this side, there is barely any thread sticking out. And I did notice that when I was taking it apart, that the nut that was on the backside was just hanging on like by 2 or 3 threads. So I'm like, clearly this can't be right. So I grabbed the bolt that came out of here, test fitted on this side, and you can see now we have plenty of threads available on this side to put a nut on it. And then if you were to grab this one and put it right here, again, you have plenty of threads. Basically, whoever was in here last, they mixed up the bolts, and this one right here was hanging on for dear life. It only had a few threads. That's absolutely crazy. It's just stupid things that just how's it go? If you got nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. So let's just move on. All right, so I am just about done on the front left side here. So we have our new strut, new bearing up there, the top hat, new lower control arm, new stabilizer link, and new outer tie rod. All right, so everything is pretty much torqued. Everything has new cotter pins in it, and this side's pretty much ready to go. I haven't buttoned this up yet because I'm gonna wait to do the one on the front right side, and then I'll put both of them in together. So here on the other side of the car, look how bad that is. That wheel bearing is destroyed. It was nowhere near this bad about a week or a week and a half ago when I first looked at it. Just goes to show how fast things can get out of control, and people want to ignore them, you know, say, hey, this wheel bearing has some play in it, needs to get changed out. and they figure, oh no, I could just keep going. Yeah, this did not take long for it to get this bad. Of course the brakes need to be changed anyway, but we don't have any of that today. We just have the wheel bearing, so I think it'll be fine. And then it could come back later on to get pads and rotors. And there we have it, guys. Here goes our new outer tie rod, new stabilizer link installed, got the other side installed as well, and our new wheel bearing. Of course I still have to put the axle nut on and torque that down to spec, but everything's looking really good. You can see where there was so much play right here where the CV shafts were just hitting everything. Or I got to put that bolt back in there. And if you look at the caliper bracket right here, since the wheel bearing was so bad, it was allowing that rotor to tilt at a weird angle, and the rotor was starting to dig into the caliper bracket. Not too much damage was done, and there's actually a little bit of life left on the brake pads. They're not completely destroyed, but of course this thing needs pads and rotors, but that's for another day. I'm just gonna go ahead, button everything up. Everything's looking really good here, and we'll take it out for a test drive. Well, before we go out for that test drive, something that looks a little odd to me are the bolts for the subframe. It's like that on both sides. You can see they look relatively new. They don't look rusty like everything else. And then there's like stacked washers behind it. I don't know if they changed to a smaller diameter bolt so they could be able to get like a little bit of a adjustment out of the subframe to try to get it to line up. I don't know. I'm just showing you guys what I find. So okay, so finally getting around to a test drive, and you can see it's dark outside. It's only like 7 p.m. But guys, it is a completely different car. There is no more clunking around up front, no more banging, no more horrible wheel bearing. I mean, this thing was so bad that the car just felt really dangerous to drive. Like, you didn't want to go over 5 miles per hour in this thing. It was just really bad. And now more or less it's normal, like no issues at all. It drives perfectly fine. I don't hear any weird noises up front. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. And the owner was also complaining about the brake pedal. She said she thinks something's wrong with the brakes because the pedal's going all the way to the floor and she has to push the pedal hard or just to get the car to slow down. And what that really was is a side effect of the bad wheel bearing. Like I said, that wheel bearing forces the rotor to push on the brake pads, which in turn pushes the piston on the caliper into the piston. So every time you go to push your brake pedal, you're trying to compensate for that, all that kickback of the piston being pushed back into the caliper. I hope all that makes sense. But now the brake pedal feels absolutely normal now that the wheel bearing is fixed. And considering we changed the outer tie rods, the steering wheel is relatively straight. Of course, I'm going to recommend a wheel alignment. But I'm really happy with the way this turned out. And as you can see, we have our flashing check engine light right there. So this thing has a misfire. I think I looked at it before, but she really wanted to get all this suspension and all this crap fixed before she starts to deal with that misfire. So that's going to be the next thing on our list, along with the front brakes. But guys, that's about it. All that work that went into this thing, and I'm happy. I think it drives really good. It's like a completely different car. It's been completely transformed, and I'm sure the owner is going to be happy with the way it is, because before, I mean, she's driving around with her kids in this car and it was a complete just coffin on wheels, you know what I mean?